you and I are going to go through a little journey through the last year and a half of my life. It's going to be a bit of a ride, so I ask that you please keep your seats and keep your arms and legs down and inside the vehicle while the ride is in motion. These are all the medications I've been prescribed over the last year and a half for my anxiety and bipolar depression. I started this journey back in January of 2018 when I was living in New York City, and I decided to go back on antidepressants after a nearly 6-year hiatus. I was on them for a brief period in college, but they kind of turned me into this emotionless zombie who loved staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning watching YouTube videos on how roller coasters got made. But I started to feel my depression come back in these waves and much worse this time. You know, I completely lost my appetite, which is a bad sign for me because I'm almost constantly putting food in my body. Couldn't sleep, and I pretty much run out of YouTube videos to watch, and that made getting out of bed feel impossible. It made everything feel impossible. So I made the conscious decision to do something about it. Over the next few months, I ended up seeing 3 different psychiatrists trying to lock down the right medication for me. I've been in the same relationship for the past 6 years, so when a licensed physician basically goes to you, that's about as close as I ever got to knowing what it's like to date in New York. And I feel like most people kind of assume that with medication, you take it and you start to feel better right away. It makes sense, that's the logical thing, but it doesn't always work so cleanly. A lot of times it's trial and error, so for me, you know, some of them worked for a little bit and then stopped, some didn't work at all, and for the most part they all just ended up making my depression much worse. I spent 5 months sick to my stomach every day, developing migraines, drastically gaining and then losing weight and then crying on the subway about once a week. Now, I know that's just what it sounds like to live in New York, but I promise you it's much worse. So in May, when I realized I had enough medications to cure a very depressed soccer team, I thought it might be time to seek out some alternate treatments. I spent the next month in a cool $1,000 on consultation appointments trying to find anything that was going to help me feel better, which is ultimately how I found TMS. Now, if you're not already familiar, TMS stands for transcranial magnetic stimulation. Essentially, it's an outpatient procedure where they take this big electromagnet, they stick it on your head, and it sends these pulses into your brain to kind of reset your brain waves back to their normal state. To put it even more simply, it feels like a tiny little man is tap dancing on your head. You go 5 days a week for about 30-minute sessions, and you pay roughly the equivalent of 1 year's tuition at a state school. In retrospect, I probably could have spent that money a little better. I could have, paid a team of scientists to shrink down into a little ship and then go into my brain to figure out what was wrong, but, hindsight's 20/20. And when you're getting the treatment, you want to kind of find things to do to pass the time, so sometimes I would be on my phone playing games, sometimes I would try to read, which, by the way, very difficult when your eyeballs are vibrating every 20 seconds. And eventually I learned I really like watching nature documentaries. You know, there's something about the beautiful cinematography and the voice of David Attenborough and watching a gazelle get torn to pieces, that's all very common. And there was this technician at the treatment center, his name was Danny. And Danny would really try to accommodate this whenever I would come in. However, Danny was just a little bit forgetful. I would come in and he would say, "Hey Sam, I've got this music documentary all lined up for you." And I go, oh no Danny, I like the nature documentaries. And he'd go, "Right, yeah, of course." So the next day I'd come in, Danny would say, "Hey Sam, I've got this true crime documentary all lined up for you." And I go, "Danny, no, it's the nature documentaries I like." And he'd go, "Yeah, you're right, of course. I'm so sorry. I promise I'll get it right next time." So the next day, I go in, there's Danny. He turns to me and he says, "Hey Sam, how's it going? You're the one who likes Hitler, right?" And I said, "What?" And he pauses, he goes, "Oh, you know what, never mind, that's someone else." And he was talking about the Hitler, the one you're probably familiar with, you know, big capital H. But apparently there was someone else at the treatment center who, while getting their treatments, just really liked watching documentaries about Hitler. And I couldn't really understand this. I just didn't get it, and so I decided I would go ahead and try it. You know, maybe there's something to it. There's something about, you know, watching this true human suffering that kind of puts my depression into perspective. So the next day, I went in, I watched a documentary about the rise and fall of the Third Reich. And I gotta tell you, and you know, this may come of a bit of a surprise, but it did not work at all. It was really as depressing as advertised. But through all that, almost exactly 1 year ago, through 8 weeks, 30-minute sessions for 5 days a week, I finally completed my TMS treatments. And I felt infinitely better. It sounds so cliche, but everything just felt so much less dark. I had gotten so used to the everyday weight that depression carries, I just forgot how light happiness feels. It was like this cloud that had been following me around for my entire life had finally lifted, and I was seeing the sun for the first time. And the last year has seen even more ups and downs and changes to my medication, but it's also seen me surviving. I enjoyed music, I ate great food, I lived my life. And look, I fully realize I'm not cured. I probably never will be without some major science fiction level advancements to modern medicine. Seriously, if you ever hear that we can shrink down scientists to go into people's brains, please let me know. But a year and a half ago, that light at the end of the tunnel seemed so unfathomable. And here I am tonight, quite literally, standing in the light. And, you know, this ride I'm on, it's going to keep going. Once you get off, I'm going right back on for another trip. And it's both immensely frustrating and completely rewarding because I'm working towards getting better. And I've learned this incredibly invaluable lesson about my depression, and it's this. Never, ever watch documentaries about Hitler. Just don't do it.